Can I just say, on the subject of bias to the left, you read out the I headline, which said British public backs closer EU trade over Trump deal.
Yeah.
And then you read a little bit further down, 47% of the UK public would prefer trade with the EU. 53% would actually prefer it with the US.
So it's a
Yes, absolutely.
Hang on.
And this is typical. No, it's not Mark's fault. It is typical I newspaper.
Or the leftist media.
Absolutely right. Precisely the point you were making.
Where does it say 50%?
Because we're supposed to have a balanced, broad spectrum, and aren't we clever because we read
Charlotte,
every single
I think that's not quite right, Michael. I think what the eye is saying here is that almost half of voters want closer ties with Europe, but Conservative voters want to prioritise America over Brussels. I can't see the 53%.
No,
there.
it's called arithmetic, Michael. No, basically, they've taken out the don't knows. They've taken out the don't knows. So there are 47% who want it, and of those who've actually decided to have an opinion, 53%, because you know what? 47 and 53 makes 100%, and it's taken out the don't knows.
How do you know they've taken them out?
I know they've taken out the don't knows. And I'm just saying, look at this ruddy headline. British public...
Well, I mean, if they have done, you're right, but I suspect there's no evidence they've taken out the don't knows.
Charlotte, notwithstanding that, these two can squabble all night. I think they see... I agree, I'm the same. So the viewers, secretly they love each other, but let's not go there. Now, Charlotte...
So, Greg.
Notwithstanding the figures, this is a yellow brick road moment for Sir Keir Starmer. Do we fall into the bosom of the United States, the biggest trading bloc outside of the EU, or do we head back to Brussels? You can't have both, can you?
Can't have both, and I think probably he'll head back to Brussels, and I kind of hope he does, because I don't want to be eating chlorinated chicken.
Well, then don't buy chlorinated chicken. And I'll tell you what, in Lichfield, in my constituency where I still live, in Lichfield, there's Florette, who are the people who make, pre-prepared salads. And to make it fresh, to make it clean, it's chlorinated. And you know what? It hasn't killed anybody. Okay, and if you don't like chlorinated chicken, don't buy chlorinated chicken.
We all know not to buy bags of salad for that very reason.
But not Florette.
The chlorinated chicken is, because the farmers will have been screwed, and so the price will be reduced.
Right.
It'll be very hard not to choose chlorinated chicken.
And it's also lower food standards, isn't it? That's the problem.
Exactly. And that's something we've always really stuck up for ourselves on.
I mean, it's a dilemma for Starmer, isn't it? Really. I'm actually a bit like my chat earlier with Theo Usherwood, because I was saying to Theo that if Starmer gets legal net migration down to, let's say, circa 200k, I think that's a political win for him. I'm not sure his party will want that. Similarly, I think a trade deal with America would be another win for Sir Keir Starmer, but would Labour backbenchers countenance that?
Well, on the immigration thing, you say it's not a win for... I think overall the party would want to get immigration down. They are getting a huge amount of pressure from the voters, particularly in the traditional Labour seats. Sorry?
Even if it hurt the public sector?
I think overall Labour would desperately want to get immigration down. That's one of the things on which they're going to be judged. On the wider issue, Starmer is, a Remainer. He said we're not going to go back into the customs union. We're not going to go back into the single market. There's no question of any of that. I think if the economy goes as it looks like it's going, they're going to have to get to speed that up and move towards Europe in this Parliament. And indeed, if Starmer went down as the Prime Minister that took us back into Europe, I think he'd be quite pleased with that. But there's a long way to go before that.
There you go. Well, listen, now it's a question, isn't it? Because if Starmer, let's say, wins the next election, if it's a decade in power, would Britain wind up back in the European Union? Would that be a good or a bad thing? I'll be asking Michael Fabricant, and I'll be asking Fabricant whether he thinks a trade deal with America is the way to go. Now, Michael, let me ask you about Donald Trump. Do you think that Keir Starmer should pursue a trade deal with America?
Yes, I do think so. They are our biggest single partner in trade. It's very, before I became an MP, I used to set up radio and television stations. And one of the easiest countries to deal with was the United States. Why? It's not just the fact that they have a common language, but it's a common legal system. They use the English legal system, apart from New Orleans, by the way, which has the Napoleonic system. You know, trying to do business, particularly in France, where I was involved, you know, had to be involved with bribery. In Italy,
right?
and yes,
You had to bribe people to do business.
with the ORTF, which was their equivalent of
And
the
do you think
BBC.
it's like
It
that?
was that which
Do you think
made me a
it's-
Brexiteer, by the
Is
way.
that
I
right?
can see how
And is it
different
still, do you think
they
it's
were.
still like that on the continent? The black economy?
I would hope not. I would hope not. I don't know, because I haven't been doing that business for some time. But what I do know is I travel a lot to Europe. I was in Rome only last weekend.
I'd love
I
to
travel a
organise.
lot to the United States of America, and I do know that we share a lot in common with them.
Can I get a very quick line from you on the Labour MP effectively calling for a blasphemy law earlier this week? You sat in the Commons for a long, long time. You left in July. What would your reaction have been if you'd been in the chamber?
I would have been shocked. Look, I'm a great believer. Look, my name is Fabricant. It's a French origin. My long past, you know, antecedents would have emigrated to this country. I have no problem with that. I'm of Jewish extraction, though I'm not practicing Jewish. But I believe that when you come to this country, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And one of the things we have in this country is tolerance. And all right, if that means occasionally you want to insult a religion. You know, I remember the case some years ago of a girl teaching in the Sudan who had a teddy bear, and they called the teddy bear Muhammad, and they said that this was blasphemy, and she was thrown into prison for several weeks, and it took a long time for the British to get her out. The point of the story is this is a tolerant country, and to be asking now for blasphemy laws, which is what he was doing in effect, you know, is taking us back 500-600 years.
Couldn't agree more. And I'm shocked that Keir Starmer didn't squash the idea and instead he sort of started talking about Islamophobia. Michael, a quick line on Assad vows to crush rebel uprising in Aleppo. Worrying developments.
Yeah, and of course, you know, I mean, amidst all this stuff about Gregg Wallace, which seems to be dominating most of the tabloids, there are, you know, more important stories. I mean,
there are.
Or even more important stories, and Aleppo is one of them.
Yeah.
And I mean, is it good news or bad news? On the one hand, Assad is a horrible man, but then some of the rebels probably aren't very nice either. So, but it is an interesting development and a sign of the fact that the Middle East is catching fire everywhere.
And the weakness of Russia.
It most
And the weakness of Russia.
Charlotte,
Good point.